All right, this is something a little different. Now, before YouTube, people had blogs, or no, actually blogs, okay? Or they had a homepage and they had an opinion. Progressive Boink was one I could remember. Progressive Boink would talk shit about like the TGIF, Urkel, do the Urkel, right? Urkel was like a terrorist, but yet people liked him anyway. Or when they talked about the Simpsons arcade game, or the E3 when they presented the PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4. I think it was the PlayStation 3. And they would say, my eyes say, no way in hell is that the new PlayStation 3. That's too advanced or whatever. So that was before, obviously now when we think of YouTube, we don't think of cat videos or a guy describing an elephant at the zoo. Now we look at political opinions or um, sub political opinions, not strictly about politics, but about video games. Do you like this video game or not? Do you like these groups of people who like these games or not, or these comic books? But here, Adi Tantimet, I think he's of Indian or Middle Eastern descent. Now, when I think of this guy, this is the guy that made uh, probably one of my favorite Justice League of America. This is called Age of Wonder, that only foreigners, people who don't speak English, love this story more than most. But I like this story, okay? JLA Age of Wonder 1 and 2, okay? And in these stories, you have the Justice League, and it's the 1900s. It's actually from the 1870s to the 1910s, or 19 teens, as we would call it. So you go through 40 years of superheroes. It's basically, as somebody said, it's the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but it's mixed with Justice League. I think it's very advanced in the way he told it. I mean, he really had a lot of creative control over this. It's like if you combine Christopher Nolan's Batman with The Prestige, right, with his other movie, The Prestige, which had Christian Bale and what's his name, Michael Caine, and it was another movie that they did. So they did Christian Bale and Christopher Nolan did four movies, right? So if you combine that with Justice League, you basically would have Age of Wonder by Adi Sakati Tantimid, or Adi Tantimid. So this is he had done articles, and he's on XCOM, or formerly known as Twitter, but this is from 2009, and I haven't read this yet, but I've been reading articles from him, and I've been learning a lot, such as Great Teacher Onizuka and Gakusen. I've been learning about movies like Life Without Principle, and movies like The Master, or The Counselor. Right? I think these are Matthew McConaughey movies. Right? They might be more than All Right. But here we have Look at Moves number 11. This is from September 2009. And let me see if I can. Let me see. So, Rich announced the coming premiere of the UK teen superhero show, The Misfits, this week, and it got me to thinking about how UK TV has hopped on the superhero bandwagon, late to America's party as usual. While superhero movies now provide the lifeblood to ensure Hollywood's survival, the UK film and TV industry has been much slower at embracing the genre. Generally, for good reason. For starters, superhero movies are way too expensive for the British film industry to make. Second, the superhero is not a native genre in British pop culture. There's a sense that it's something juvenile and silly. There is no iconic superhero character in the history of British comics, so the stalwarts were adventurers like Dan Dare and Doctor Who. Marvel Man was an overt ripoff of Captain Marvel and would have faded into obscurity if Alan Moore hadn't written his 80s reboot that, along with Watchmen, helped herald the grim and gritty phase of superhero comics in the decades after. The biggest British pop hero is James Bond, who is a bastard. Whenever British comics tackled characters with superpowers, they not only seldom wore tights and capes, but were also often very strange anti-heroes like the Steel Claw, Robot Archie, or amoral archcriminal the Spider. The other touchstone for British adventure comics has been the violent and gleefully mean-spirited satire of 2000 AD. I would Judge Dredd, and who Alan Grant, who would write that great stuff. Oh my God. No one ever really took Marvel's Captain Britain that seriously. Not even Alan Moore or Jamie Delano when they wrote him. The most famous British comic character right now is Judge Dredd. a fascist copper from a satirical future America as viewed as created by Brits. Yeah, okay, one of them. John Wagner is a transplanted American immigrant to Britain, but you know what I mean. I'm going to skip around here. There's always a sneaking suspicion that a superhero isn't as pure as wonderful. The reference point the majority of British people have for superheroes is the silly, campy Batman TV series of the 1960s. You know, Collie UK and I have a difference of opinion about Batman. Now, Collie UK, who reviewed or may still review ZX Spectrum games, he likes Adam West Batman. I like Michael Keaton Batman, sometimes Christian Bale, but my childhood would deem that I would respect Michael Keaton, and he made a great comeback, I think. Not the greatest one, but that's James Gunn's fault. Um, Kevin O'Neill, clearly feeling the boys will. So essentially, British regard for superheroes as twats in tights or tits for short. Pat Mills and Kevin O'Neill made their feelings clear about superheroes in martial law, which is far more merciless and hate-filled than Garth Ennis's much softer The Boys will ever be. Oh, I have to look at martial law now. Even when Neil Gaiman and a stable of British science fiction and fantasy writers decided to launch a British answer to George R. Martin's Wild Cards books in the 80s, they came up with Temps, which took the position of having superpowers in Britain, which would be a mundane and rather embarrassing position to be in. Since British TV became ruthlessly market-driven in the 90s, everything has to be derivative of something else. One example is My Hero, a soul-killingly unfunny ripoff of Mork and Mindy, where the quirky alien was in fact a superhero in cape and tights. In a world where nobody spoke or behaved like a recognizable human being from real life. It didn't work because it wasn't about anything other than how stupid the writer had to make everyone. Oh my god, it's like Stressed Eric. Is it like Stressed Eric? I am not Addie says, I'm not a fan of the show, but I could at least appreciate it's an allegory for London's Z-list celebrity. No Heroics seems to take a cue from Temps to portray a Britain where people with powers are a commonplace occurrence, and so there would be a celebrity hierarchy just like current celebrity culture. So only the famous are the the ones people care about. Only instead of soap stars and footballers, it's superheroes. No Heroics takes it for granted that superheroes in their tights look ridiculous, and the minor and major celebs would have the same kind of neediness, craveness, envy, and securities as the celebs you would encounter in exclusive watering holes like the Groucho Club and Soho House. Now this is interesting. This one here. And British TV's brief and cautious dip into the superhero genre isn't over yet. Writer-director Joe, is it Ahern? Ahern. Aherne, Ahern, who's best known for the not bad vampire series Ultraviolet, is said to have a superhero series in development at the BBC, and unless we hear any more about it, it might end up growing on the growing mountain of unaired pilots that probably didn't show up in all these 15 years. The BBC is building up. Now, E4 is trotting out Misfits and about a bunch of teenager delinquents who end up with superpowers. Rich is right. This was almost certainly pitched as Skins with superpowers. Of course, it's a drama department's attempt to be edgy and street again, but it just sounds to me like a more grungy remake of the Tomorrow People. I think that's a CW show, right? Everyone old is given a new pair of jeans and sneakers, superpowers as metaphors for the agonies of adolescence, which has been done in Buffy and X-Men for ages. But this is considered new in British TV. I just hope the characters aren't going to be another bunch of tits. Being teenagers is hard enough as it is. Now I'm off to grab the demo for Batman Arkham Asylum to play Batman as incompetently as possible so that he'll get killed at every turn. It should take me 5-10 minutes tops. Oh man, I love this. This is, I skipped over some things because he kind of repeats himself, but Adi, what a, bless Adi Sakti Tantimet. I mean, that's amazing stuff. Let's look at his recent tweets. Okay, this is from June 26th. Is Sith really just an anagram for shit? Is that what Star Wars really boils down to? Also from June 25th, The Acolyte. So this show is really about the origin of the Sith after all. And the first Sith was just an asshole who wants to be an asshole. So he's still around. He's still around for current days. Let me see. Let me see if I can go. Let's go back to the top. Can we go back to the top? There we go. So there's Adi Tantimet. Let me give you my final thoughts for this, at least for this article, and I'll tell you what I think so far. Adi doesn't. Addy, I think we don't take political sides. We see the bullshit. Now there are times where the left is right and the right is left behind, or the left is left and the right is right. Um, I think he probably has a huge bullshit detector. Now, I've said I was done with hero worshiping. However, I do like his unique perspectives, and there's going to be times where he'll get it wrong. But I like that he has a world perspective of what we're so used to. Now, do we care what happens in the rest of the world if we're in the United States? Probably not. We can't be asked. But to think that superheroes exist everywhere and it's all about superheroes is utter bullshit. I mean, it doesn't really work because everybody has their own perspective. It reminds me of the movie The Fall with Lee Pace and Katinka Untaru. That was the one directed by Tarsum Singh. And The Fall, the Lee Pace's character talks about an Indian, right? Now he's an American, so when we think of Indians, we think like the old racist right? The guy who cries at the landfill, the Cherokee chief, right? But when Katinka hears about the Indian, she thinks of a great Indian warrior from India, right? So there's two different perspectives of what an Indian is. So we may like superheroes in our country. We may defend the MCU, the DCU or DCEU or the Spawn universe or whatever it is, okay? XYZ. I only have one superhero in my stories, and I'm not legally allowed to really show him fully until 2034. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. But but the Man of Super is a reference point more than it is like actually realized. But anyway, um, people just like Doctor Who. They like Doctor Who. They like other characters that are. They look at the person more than just a silly costume and silly powers. Like, what does all this mean? And he talks about the worst episode ever of what was it? It was the children. I think it was Torchwood, right? The children are sacrificed in Torchwood. Oh my God. Yeah, so Adi Tantamed really knows his shit. When it comes to understanding fiction, Adi has a world perspective, a real world perspective of what fiction is and what nonfiction is. Um, to be bested only by Joseph Campbell's modern day views if Joseph Campbell was still alive. If Joseph Campbell was still alive, I think he would agree with mostly what Adi Tantamed is saying. You know, what is fiction now? What does fiction mean? Writer of Ravi PI trilogy, screenplays, graphic novels, JLA Age of Wonder. And I got these two books. Okay, I got Age of Wonder when nobody else did, when these books had just come about. Okay, both this one and this one. And it was very good. And he does have commentary for this, and I'll share that commentary later on. But I just wanted to share that with you all. And, if you like this video, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, I'll share these. I mean, they're great. My perspective is I know that we're self-centered when it comes to Star Wars and superheroes, but I think superheroes is probably more lost on the UK than Star Wars. Because Star Wars did start out at Elstree Studios, and you had different British actors. I do think if you put a gun to their head, I think that the British would probably choose Star Wars over superheroes. That's just my feeling of it. Other people don't know. I mean, you think of the Andaman Islands and the Andamanese, who are poorly mistreated when it comes to tour buses in India, but that's a whole other thing. Um, what is their superheroes? They have gods. We had we worshipped Greek gods and Roman gods and gods of Asian lore, of Eastern lore, and gods of Aztec lore and Mayan lore. And then once we were able to create our own stories, then we just we didn't think about it so much, or we had Jesus Christ as our savior, or we would think about the Three Musketeers or the Scarlet Pimpernel, and then Superman and Batman, or Dick Tracy. We shifted to video game characters, and then whatever augmented reality, we create our own characters with AR glasses that we put on our fucking heads, and we create our own simulated bots with AI. That's the hero worship we will do in the future. So that's it. That's it for now. I got some stuff to do. One more video tonight. I hear a certain presidential candidate is probably not going to make it much longer. Well, one party whoever you vote for, just beware the bullshitters on any side of the political spectrum. Just listen to your own voice. Anyway, I'm out for now.